One of America's largest cell phone providers is going to be offering 100% coverage by 2025. Now, can you guess who it is? Is it T-Mobile, AT&T, or Verizon? Now, I'm going to be doing an in-depth video here, and if you're watching on YouTube, you already cheated because you already saw the title of the video. But for those who are wondering, T-Mobile has partnered with Starlink to provide 100% coverage by 2025 globally. What that means is that if you have T-Mobile and you have a phone such as iPhone 14 and 15 that is dedicated to the T-Mobile network, mind you, dedicated to the T-Mobile network, you will be able to use it for satellite data, satellite phone calls, and satellite text. Now, that is different than SOS. Apple's SOS feature is completely separate. That is strictly just for emergencies. Whereas with T-Mobile, if you enter a dead spot, a dead area, and you cannot get any LTE from a terrestrial tower, such as a normal cell tower that has a fiber backhaul, then you will be patched into Starlink. Now the question is, how and what did they put into these phones and devices that is powerful enough to reach up into space like they did? So let's find out. So for those who don't know, Elon Musk owns Starlink. Starlink is a product of SpaceX. SpaceX is a commercial launch vehicle company. Basically, they have commercialized space flights. They can launch satellites, they launch their own satellites, and they launch government satellites. So what happens is these phones, when they were made by Apple, they have the ability to connect over LTE over satellite. So if you have a newer iPhone, it doesn't have to be the newest one, and some other newer devices that has satellite capabilities, and you are on the T-Mobile network, you can actually will get data. Now, the data is going to be anywhere, it's like less than 5 megabits per second. So it's not like going to be, oh, I'm just going to turn off LTE and just use it and say screw the cell tower. That's not how it's going to work. There's going to be prioritization, queues and stuff. This is primarily going to be for those who need to make a phone call or send a text message or even like a picture message or a Facebook Messenger message while you're out and about. You know, like let's say that you live in town, or let's say you live in the mountains, but you go to town and you come into a lot of dead spots, like you find a vehicle accident or something like that, you'll be able to make a call to emergency services that's going to get patched over from T-Mobile into Starlink. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that Starlink has a lot to do with peering. Now, again, if you're watching me on YouTube and TikTok, you may not know, but I own my own brokering company for ISPs and carriers. I'm listed as an ISP myself, and I'm listed as a carrier myself, which means I could technically feed internet to actual cell towers and peer that with Starlink. What that means is peering is instead of basically, let's say I have Comcast and I need to talk to or connect to someone on Starlink. Typically, what would happen is, me over here on Comcast, I would then have to connect to the local data center, who then would have to connect over a major backbone haul carrier like Cogent, Hurricane Electric, Telia, Lumen, to get me from, say, Pittsburgh here to Chicago, Illinois, and then it would hit their uplink to Starlink, go up and then talk to the guy in Iowa, for example. Well, with the ability of peering is, let's say I come into Comcast at the local data center and Comcast has a peering agreement with Starlink, it can hop directly over to them, lower latency, and be able to get there quicker and faster. That's what T-Mobile is doing with Starlink. They have direct peering agreements with T-Mobile, but it's not just for sharing internet. It's going to be sharing the exchange boundary and the exchange, what we call the LEC, the local exchange carrier. That's able to basically parse over all the emergency calls, parse over emergency alerts, do text messaging, because for those who don't know, anyone can offer internet service. That's no issue. However, when you start getting into phones and texting and stuff like that, there's a lot of federal regulations that you must abide by, and that is due to 911. You know, the FCC is very, very strict on what you can and cannot do as a carrier. That's why you don't find so many carriers coming out. However, pay attention, guys, because Starlink is now going to be offering cell phone service in 2025 as well. So not only is T-Mobile going to get satellite service to make global coverage, but Starlink's going to be coming out with some super cheap phone plans as well. Now, we don't know all the specs. We do know that they have filed paperwork to become an actual carrier. That means that they can get phone numbers, they can issue them, and they can basically become an actual cell phone company. They are not an MVNO, a mobile virtual network operator. That's MVNO. Xfinity Mobile is an MVNO of Verizon. Cricket is an MVNO of AT&T. Spectrum Mobile is an MVNO of Verizon. You guys know what that is. MVNO is basically like a white label reseller, but you have parts of the spectrum dedicated to you. Costs a lot of money to set up. Now, Comcast is also becoming a provider as well in the cell phone space. Notice, I did not say Xfinity Mobile is becoming. No. It's going to be the Comcast name. What that's going to do is they're going to be phasing out, most likely, Xfinity Mobile and transitioning everyone to Comcast. Now, they're using CBRS frequency. So Comcast has a huge span of 600 megahertz spectrum. They're selling it to T-Mobile. T-Mobile is going to be issuing extended range, so huge wide area 5G over 600 megahertz. However, Comcast is going to be using CBRS frequencies. That is basically public broadcast frequencies. The U.S. Navy uses it for radar. Basically, they are taking the cheap way out. They're selling off the spectrum in an auction to T-Mobile, and then they're going to be using public frequencies to try to make more money. I think there's going to be some issues with that, but you got Starlink coming out with phone service, and you also have Comcast doing the same exact thing, while SpaceX Starlink is working hand in hand with T-Mobile, who already has excellent terrestrial coverage. Again, this is huge though. So, yes, T-Mobile may have just raised their rates after, so many years. Have you looked at the prices of Verizon and AT&T? Trust me, I've had all three of them. And honestly, by far, T-Mobile has been the cheapest. Now, again, look at the actual rate plans, not what your EIP is. For example, with an iPhone, and if I get a watch, if I get an iPad, that's like an extra $110 a month I'm paying to pay off the devices. Look at the actual cost of service that's for those lines. Don't look at your interest in your term loan. Look at the actual rate of the plan. But yes, guys, let me know in the comments down below. Are you going to be switching to T-Mobile? Who do you have now? What is your plan once 2025 hits? Are you going to go try out Comcast? Are you going to try out Starlink? Or are you going to stick and go with T-Mobile and get the just best of both worlds? Let me know down below, guys. Thank you.